Hi everyone, just wanted to give us a quick rundown here on some of the tools that you're going to find within Illustrator that'll be most helpful for you in creating a 2D logo. The first ones that you're going to want to be familiar with are the selection tool and the direct selection tool. They're both used to move things around on the screen. The selection tool can move entire paths or large selections, and the direct selection tool can move individual anchor points or a combination of different individual anchor points if you choose to. The pen tool is going to give us straight lines just by clicking around on the screen, and it'll also give us curved lines by clicking and dragging. The text tool, speaks for itself, right? It'll allow us to create text. The one thing you have to keep in mind is once you do have your text created, you need to right click on it and say create outlines. We need it to be that because, again, we're talking about vector artwork, 2D vector lines that we're making for a logo that we then bring into Maya and can turn into 3D object. The next one to cover here is the basic shapes tool. It gives us things like squares, rectangles, rounded rectangles, circles and ellipses, polygons and stars. And the pencil tool, which of course is then used for freehand curves, which might be the easiest option for you depending on what kind of logo you're trying to create. So let's go and check those out. In Adobe Illustrator, what I'm going to do is press File and say New, just to give myself something to work with. I'll do with 12 inches and 12 inches for the width and the height. So all the tools that we had just talked about can be found on the left-hand side of your screen in this toolbar here. I guess the first thing to do would be to start creating some basic shapes. So here you have rectangle, rounded, ellipse, polygon, and star. The flare tool, it does something that looks pretty cool, but you really wouldn't want to use it for the sake of your logo. Just not for creating 2D vector artwork. If you wanted to create some sort of flare, that'd be better off done within Maya or within Unreal with some sort of animation. But something else to talk about right now is any one of these options that has a little arrow in the corner of it means that there are more options to choose from under that subcategory. So if you want, you can hold down and place your cursor on the very right side of this menu, and it'll actually break it out, and that way you can move this on the screen. You see all your options at one time. That can be pretty helpful. So for a square, there are two methods for basically placing any one of these. You can simply click once on the screen, and you're going to get a message that pops up asking you for the width and the height. Or if you're doing something like a polygon or a star, it'll ask you for how many sides or how many points would you want. So you can actually type in exact values if that's what you're looking for. So 3 inches by 3 inches, you say OK, and then there is your square. If you prefer, you can also click and drag on the screen, and you can either make rectangles, and if you hold shift, that'll actually make it perfectly proportioned, so you can create a square without really having to struggle with lining it up. So that can be helpful as well. Rounded rectangle, same options for placement. You can click and drag. If you hold shift, it'll make it proportioned. If you just click once on the screen, you can see here you have a third option now for a corner radius. So these are all things that you can specify exactly if you choose to. You're going to get exactly what you want out of it. The third one, the ellipse tool, clicking and dragging can give you an ellipse. If you click one time, it just asks you for the width or the height. If you click and drag and hold shift, that'll give you a perfect circle. The polygon tool, if you click one time on the screen, it gives us a radius, so how big do you want this polygon to be and how many sides should it have. You can say OK, places that on the screen. If I wanted to move this around, I would just go ahead and grab my selection tool and move it around on the screen. I'm just going to make some more space here. The other option for a polygon, this is pretty unique, is that you can click and drag, and if you press up and down on your arrow keys, so if you press up, you're actually adding more sides to the polygon. If you press down, it'll actually take it all the way down to a triangle. And the last option here, if I click once on the screen, it'll ask me for two radiuses and how many points on the star would you like. The first radius is the outer one. I'm sorry, the second radius is the outer, so how big should this star be? And the inner basically determines how big the legs of the star are. So if I just said OK to this, I would get a normal looking star. If I did a click and drag, I can press up on the keyboard and get as many as possible, and you can just hold that down and it'll make more and more and more of them. So you get some pretty interesting things with that. The star also can be brought down to a triangle. So if I just hold down on the keyboard, all the way down to that. But if you hold shift, that kind of lines things up perfectly for you. Another little tip that I have for you is as you are clicking and dragging, creating a shape, you can actually hold spacebar, and that allows you to move about the screen. So if you're trying to line something up perfectly and where you clicked and started to create it wasn't really lining up for you, you can always just hold spacebar and move it around the screen. Let go of spacebar, let go of your mouse, and there it is. So that's pretty much it for the basic shapes. I will show you again with the selection tool. If you wanted to move one thing, you can click on it, move it around on the screen. If you wanted to move more than one thing, you could click and drag, selecting a bunch of items. You can even hold shift and select other items, and then move them all around at the same time. If you want to move individual points, however, you need to use the direct selection tool, and I'll show you here with the star. If I use that and click on one anchor point, isolating it, you can then click and drag on that point, moving it around on the screen. You can also use your keyboard to get more of like a precise movement if that's what you're looking for. So yeah, that's pretty much it for basic shapes here. I'm going to clear my palette, and I will talk to you next about the text tool. So different text options that you have are to just type in a line, or a normal text box like you would on a PowerPoint slide or within Microsoft Word. Area type tool will actually allow you to type within a shape. Type on a path tool, like the description says, you can type on a path. That can be a pencil line, a pen line, or even a shape line like I just showed you a second ago. And then you can also do those three options but vertically. So what I want to show you first, I'll just do a breakout menu here, is the type tool. So I can click just one time on the screen and you just get like a line of text. You can then increase the font size just by selecting the text, and right up at the top of the window here you can hit the up arrow. You can type in any value that you're looking for. There's also a drop down menu that has different point values anywhere between 6 and 72. So that's just normal typing. If I did the same thing and I'm just going to deselect here, clicked and dragged a text box out, it would make all that text within that text box. For the next one, I will create a shape for us to type within. I will use the star tool. It's kind of the most impressive for this. I'm just going to switch my fill and my stroke color. By selecting the area type tool, you can click within a shape or a closed path of any kind, and that would allow you to then create text that kind of forms into the shape that is available. If I decrease my point size here, we'll get something that looks a lot cooler. Just type a whole bunch. That will fill the shape. The next option is if I made a shape, again I'll give us another star, you can also type along a path. So by selecting that, you can click anywhere on the edge and it will then allow us to type a bunch of letters that follow the path. It doesn't have to be a shape. It can also be a pen line, a pencil line, like I said before. And then of course we have all the vertical text options which do the exactly same thing. I did mention before that whenever we are using text, one thing that we do want to do is create outlines from it. So what I'm going to do is select the text, right click on it, and go to create outlines. This now converts it all to simply just vector art, which is lines and anchor points. You cannot change the text after doing so. So if you need to retype the word or something, you need to either create a new text box or Control Z and go back and change it. But what you can do at this point is move individual letters or individual anchor points. So if I wanted to, I could grab an individual anchor point, select it one time, isolating it, and then just like I showed you before with the shape, you can click and drag on them, you can move them around. I can grab this handle here and make that curve very more pronounced, move this point, move this. I mean, you get the picture. So you can get some really crazy looking results by doing something like that as well. The last two things that I want to show you are the pen tool and the pencil tool. So I'm just going to zoom out again, click and drag, hit delete on my keyboard to clear everything away. And the pencil tool, we'll start with that, is much easier to use than the pen tool. I'll tell you that right off the bat. You just can simply click and drag, and this creates a series of anchor points that you can again, use the selection tool to click and manipulate. If I isolate it, you can move this around on the screen. If we were going to use the pen tool, what I need to tell you about that is you can click on different points around the screen. Just one click, left clicking around will give us straight lines. If you wanted to have curved lines, what you would need to do is click to create the first anchor point, and then click and drag to create your second one and create that curve. What you see here extending off the anchor point are called handles. We can use the white arrow like I was just showing you up here on the pencil tool. It was a lot smaller. This is a lot bigger. You can actually grab on that handle and manipulate the curve in any way that you want. You'll notice that this kind of curve is a little peakish. If you wanted to have something that was a lot more round, what you would have to do first is using the pen tool, click and drag to create an initial handle points, anchor points with handles, and then click on a second point and you can click and drag again to create a much more rounded curve. The last thing that I will mention is that if you had a sketch that you made or you found an image online that you wanted to trace components of, what you would need to do is utilize the layers panel off on the left hand side here. So layers, just think of it like layers of a cake. You can stack one on the other and you're going to see one object on top of that on top of the other. They can be very helpful for separating out parts of your design that you want to turn on and off by using the visibility icon here. Just a simple click turns that layer on or off. And if you want to create new layers, you can click on this little post-it note down here with the bent corner, and that'll give you as many as you need. What I do mostly if I'm trying to trace a sketch or I'm trying to trace something that already exists is I create a layer and do a file, place, look for whatever the image is. I'm going to use this Rockstar PNG, place that on the screen. Mine is very big, so I'm going to zoom out, click and drag on the corner here, make that smaller, move it into the center. I'll zoom back in, and what would be most helpful to you then is that you can actually lock a layer by clicking on this box here, and then on the second layer that you have created you can make all of your artwork on top of that without actually accidentally grabbing the image that you just have placed and moving it around the screen. So, to do something like this, I would probably utilize a couple of rounded rectangles to get this perimeter here. I could use the text tool and lay it on an R. I wouldn't really have to worry about matching the font because I could just always use the direct selection tool and grab the individual anchor points that I create. I could use the star tool as well, and even though it might not be a slanted star, kind of the same principle, I could always use the direct selection tool and manipulate individual anchor points. So that pretty much sums it up for this video. The next step for you would be to save this as an Illustrator 8 file once you've created all of your artwork, and that can be seen on the next slide.